Welcome into the 28th episode of The Ivy, as I'm Thomas, and I'll be here with you for the next 40 to 45 minutes to dive into everything Cubs related. If you like the Cubs, you've come to the right place. We have a lot to talk about today. I'm extremely grateful, as always, that you took some time out of your busy schedule to join me here. All right, so first tonight, we're going to start off with the trade deadline and what went down for the Cubs in that. Obviously, the big one was outfielder Nick Castellanos, the lefty masher. But there were some other pieces that were added that we'll look into later on. And then we'll shift to the normal recap of the last couple series versus the Cardinals and Brewers. Obviously, the Cardinals one wasn't great as we lost 2 of 3, but we were able to sweep the Milwaukee Brewers. That was very impressive, as now we're 21 games over 500 at home. We can't say the same about on the road, as we were down there with the worst teams in the MLB as far as our road record goes. But we'll dive into all that, and we'll start it off with the trade deadline. And it all started with David Phelps. That was the first move for the Cubs. They traded with their Toronto Blue Jays. This was a trade that made a lot of sense for the Cubs. To me, they needed bullpen help. However, they couldn't go out and get an elite arm because of the prospect price that was there at the deadline. That's why you saw a lot of high prices for those high-end relievers. So going out, getting a guy like Phelps, he missed all of last year with Tommy John. He's only appeared in 17 games this year, now 19 since he's appeared in 2 with the Cubs. But overall, in those 17 outings, a 3.63 ERA, 18 strikeouts. On the other hand, we traded right-handed pitcher Thomas Hatch. He's a 24-year-old. He's really struggled this year in AA, has just a 4-10 record in 21 starts, along with a 4.59 ERA. He spent the last 2 years in AA. He's seen as a potential middle innings or long reliever someday in the majors. So overall, we didn't really give up a whole lot, and that was a trend we saw continue in the deadline. Overall, I think we didn't give up anything, honestly, that's going to impact our future, which is really big because obviously, I mean, we're not going to complain about giving away Gleyber Torres because Aroldis helped us win a championship, but we see that our high-end prospects, guys like Gleyber Torres, Eloy Jimenez, Dylan Cease is just coming up with the White Sox. Those guys have panned out so far. We've seen just how well our top prospects have done, and for us not to go up anyone and I think add significant help to our major league roster, and we've already seen it with the 3 guys we acquired. I think that's a big point to emphasize in Theo's job that he did with this deadline. Let's move on now to the second acquisition. This was on trade deadline day. So David Phelps happened the day before, and then the Cubs ended up losing to the Cardinals 2-1 that night. The next day, and we'll get into the game recap later, but the next day, trade deadline day, was just absolutely crazy. Not so much for until probably 3 o'clock. The deadline was at 4 Central Time. But about 2:33, it really picked up. And honestly, the biggest news came out for a majority of the teams. We saw Zach Greinke sign. Castellanos, probably the best bat at the deadline that was acquired by any team in the MLB. That all happened really, really late. But when it did, it was crazy. But anyways, Tony Kemp was traded from the Houston Astros to the Chicago Cubs earlier in the day. I can't exactly remember what time this was. I think it was kind of in the afternoon, sort of early afternoon. Anyways, Tony Kemp, a utility man. I don't mind this signing. We traded Martin Maldonado to the Houston Astros. Maldonado started just 4 games with the Cubs this year. His main role pretty much was to bring in short-term insurance because Wilson went to the IL. And Kemp was recently DFA'd by Houston because he was hitting just 227, 308, 417 slash line in 66 games this year with the Astros. Not to mention, with how much depth and talent they have, they don't really need Tony Kemp. On the other hand, they acquired Martin Maldonado last year as well at the deadline. So they brought him right back. Kind of an interesting move. But anyways, this was a signing that, I mean, overall, Tony Kemp isn't the worst player. I don't think he's gotten a whole lot of consistent chances in Houston. He's a hard worker. He's athletic. He's fast, and he's a good baseball player. And I think that the Cubs needed to add depth to their bench, and this was a move obviously very cheap. A guy like Maldonado, obviously now with Wilson going down, we probably wish we didn't make this deal. But hindsight 2020, you can't tell those things. But anyways, at the time, we had Victor Caratini, Martin Maldonado, and then, of course, the aforementioned Contreras. And it looked like losing Maldonado wouldn't be too big of an issue, having Vic and Wilson. However, we just saw yesterday Wilson with the right hamstring injury. He's placed on the 10-day IL for the Cubs. So anyways, overall, I didn't mind this move at the time it was made because – a solid bench depth in Tony Kemp, and he's a lefty as well. So, yeah, it also opened up a roster spot for the Cubs, which ended up helping them get Nick Castellanos later in the day. So, yeah, let's move on to that deal I just mentioned. Nick Castellanos, this deal reported by some Detroit beat reporter or someone in the front office with the last name of Avila. Supposedly 40 seconds left, 3:59. Theo struck a deal with the Tigers to send Nick Castellanos to Wrigley Field and the Chicago Cubs, as the Cubs traded away Alex Lange, the former 2017 first-rounder, and Paul Reichen, two pitchers in the Cubs system. Castellanos, before coming to the Cubs, was hitting .273 on a lowly Detroit Tigers team. He is known for power, however, he only has 11 homers this year. That's not terrible, but it's also not eye-popping. He has yet to hit one with the Cubs, but I expect one in this next series against Oakland at home. But anyways, he led the league in doubles as well, or he leads the league in doubles still currently. I know he has at least one, maybe a couple with the Cubs already. And as for what we gave up, in 17 outings this year for Paul Reichen at Single-A Myrtle Beach, he has a 10-5 record with a 3.97 ERA. He's all right. But on the other hand, Lange, he was the 2017 first-rounder, and he's also on that Single-A Pelicans squad. He's done really bad this year. He has over a 7 ERA at a 7.36 clip in 11 starts. He's just 1-9 on the year. And clearly he hasn't panned out so far in his career. Detroit's probably hoping he can get back to the guy that the Cubs drafted in 2017 in the first round. But overall, for the Cubs, I'm pleased with the acquisition. We needed to change something up, and Theo struck again, down to literally the last minute for the Cubs. Like I said, I didn't think we overpaid at all. And overall, my thoughts on the deadline, I'd say it was actually pretty good for the Cubs. It's not that David Phelps and Tony Kemp are going to be spectacular producers, but when you round it off with Castellanos, it may be enough, and we've seen it kind of be enough to jumpstart this team a little bit. Especially Castellanos, he's done well. He's fit in nicely so far with the Cubs. I know he has multi-hit games, but that's what it is. It just sounds weird. And he also has a double. He's got an RBI, or a few RBIs, I think. And Tony Kemp just had his first RBI today on a sac fly. He had his first hit, I think it was yesterday, against Milwaukee. So Kemp hasn't been as good as Castellanos, but that's obviously expected. And I think Kemp has produced at times, along with David Phelps. He had a strong inning in St. Louis, and then yesterday he did give up the one run, but the thing about that outing is he had intentional walk, Christian Yelich, pretty much, and then they also had a bloop little infield single over his mitt, just barely over his glove. And then the last pitch, or his 2 strikes, 2 outs on Ryan Braun, he had an RBI single on a pitch that was outside the strike zone. So overall, he didn't mess up that pitch. It was a good pitch, and he got Braun to actually chase it. Braun just got it right on the perfect end of the bat there. But anyways, I think so far all 3 have produced well, and I cannot say that Theo did a bad job, especially when, when you look at this team, we were in talks to get a lot of big-time guys at the deadline, whether it was a reliever, whether it was Whit Merrifield or other bats. And for us to get probably the best bat at the deadline and not give up a whole lot and still help our bullpen in some way, and with David Phelps and then giving Joe Madden another utility guy to play with and Tony Kemp, I think it was a good deadline overall. So now let's move into, or also I should mention that the Houston Astros got Zach Greinke at the end, the deadline there, the last minute. They also got Mike Leake. So having Garrett Cole, Justin Verlander, Aaron Sanchez too, who I think, they no-hit, who was it? They no-hit the Mariners, maybe it was. 1 second here. I want to make sure I get that right. I don't think it was the Mariners. We'll see. Yeah, it was the Mariners. So they no-hit the Mariners yesterday, and Aaron Sanchez, their new guy from Toronto, he, along with Biagini, the Toronto reliever, all those guys went to Houston last minute at the deadline, and Aaron Sanchez, 6 no-hit innings yesterday. They finished the no-hitter yesterday, so their starting rotation is just absolutely nuts. It's crazy good. I expect the Astros to go back to the World Series and probably win it with what they've done. Their lineup is finally healthy. So having Correa and Altuve back, Springer's back, and Brantley's been there. And Bregman's been there. He's been healthy. So overall, I wanted to mention that because that was very impressive that, the Houston front office, they gave up, I think, their second, third, and fourth, or maybe it was third, fourth, and fifth prospects. One of those three. Either way, a long haul, a big haul for Zach Greinke, but at that point, why not? I mean, for Houston to be that bold, you have to tip your cap because they're closing in on a window and they're fully in, and you have to give that respect to their front office and not holding on prospects for pretty much no reason. But anyways, let's move on here to the game recaps a little bit and just closing a few pages here as I have a bunch pulled open. Just 1 second. Just trying to get back to July for the Cardinals series. All right, so let's start it off. It was last Tuesday for the Cubs and the Cardinals. This one was in St. Louis to kick off a 3-game series. July 30th, and the Cubs came into this one 56-49, 7 games over 500. Yu Darvish starting for the Cubs in this one. On the other side, it was Adam Wainwright, the veteran, and we saw Yu Darvish outpitch Wainwright. Darvish had a very good start, 6 innings, 6 hits, 2 earned runs, and 9 strikeouts. We've really seen the strikeout pitch working for Darvish in the second half. He struck out another 8 today, I believe, against Milwaukee, in which he went 5 innings and earned the win. But when you look at his second half numbers as far as strikeouts, he has 6 against Pittsburgh, 8 against Pittsburgh, 7 against Cincinnati, 6 against San Fran, 9 against St. Louis, and 8 against Milwaukee. So we've really seen an uptick in Yu Darvish's strikeouts, along with consistency in going 5 and 6 innings. Since July 3rd, Yu Darvish hasn't gone less than 5 innings, and he's gone at least 6. Out of all those times, there was there were 6 starts since July 3rd, and he's gone at least 6 innings in 5 of 6. The only one he didn't was today, actually, but he was still very efficient. 5 hits, 1 earned run off 1 Christian Yelich homer in the first inning. Yelich's 37th homer of the season, but 5 innings, 8 strikeouts. Opponent batting average of .219 today against Milwaukee, and he won another game. So Yu Darvish was really good against St. Louis. However, the Cubs blew this one. It wasn't